Good afternoon, students. I am going to take a couple of minutes just to talk about Tpack, and I realized as I was getting ready to do this that I don't have my notes here, and they are at the office, which normally wouldn't be a problem because I'd just walk down and have class and talk about it, but that's not going to happen, so I'll have to head to the office this week to grab any future presentations. So oops, let's go back one. So this is the Tpack framework that you read about this week, and as you know from your reading, this is based on the work of Schulman in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, and his work focused on the connection between content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. And Kohler and Mishra added the technology component of that. And so we start our discussion by asking the question, well, what is technology? And of course, technology is anything that helps us achieve a goal or achieve a task. It could be anything from a book to a pencil to a whiteboard, overhead projector, a grip that you put on your pencil to help you grasp it is a type of assistive technology. And again, why we want to use it is because it helps us to complete some task that we're trying to accomplish. It makes that task or the completion of it easier. As they say in the article, historically technology has been characterized by several features, one being stability. And so if we think about a pencil, which is a form of technology, we may not think about it that way, but anyone who was writing with a quill and ink would beg to differ that a pencil was a form of technology when it was invented that made that task much easier and less messy than it was prior to the invention of a pencil. And the pencil that we see here is not very much different than the pencil that we would have seen being produced in Henry David Thoreau's family's pencil factory, 200 years ago. So there's a degree of stability to technology, pre-digital technologies. There's a degree of specificity. So this pencil is used for primarily one task, and that is to write. I mean, sure, a student could wield it as a weapon or someone else, but primarily it has a very specific purpose, and that purpose is to write. In addition, pre-digital era technologies were transparent. In other words, we all pretty much understand how a pencil operates. We've got a wood casing with graphite in the center and an eraser on the end. There's not a lot of mystery involved in the use of a pencil. Excuse me, allergies are terrible. In contrast, today's technologies are characterized by a number of features also, the first being that they're protean. In other words, there are many uses for the technology. So if we think of something like a computer, we're looking at an old computer tower here. A cell phone might be a better example. It is a computer also, but a smartphone is a computer, it's a phone. We can write a paper on it, we can access the internet on it, we can listen to music on it, we can take a video on it, we can take a picture on it. Probably the least common purpose of our smartphone is to actually make a phone call on it. It's got a calculator on it. So there are many uses. Unlike the pencil, there are many uses for today's technologies. Today's technologies are unstable. They're constantly changing. So if you think about when I first started using a cell phone, probably didn't have my first cell phone until 2002, 2003, something like that. It was, and I still actually have that phone. It was a Nokia, and essentially all it did was make a phone call from anywhere. Very small device. And if you think about where we went from that little teeny, and like I said, they were very small. They would fit in your hand. You could conceal it in your hand. And then we went from there to a flip phone, and again, they were very small, and primarily you used them to make a call. They evolved into where you could text on them. But if you think about that in the early 2000s to what we're seeing today with the smartphone, that's a huge change. Another one would be, when I first started teaching this class in 2008, we did not focus on apps because there really were no apps. And now there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of apps available. Finally, another characteristics of digital technologies are that they are opaque. In other words, most people don't know what's going on inside of that box or in their phones. Believe it or not, again, back to when I first started teaching this class, 2008, that was the first thing we talked about, was hardware and software. And we talked about what was in that box, about hard drives and, RAM and ROM and different features of or parts of hard drive. Okay, evidently wants me to change, so it's telling us I'll quit talking. Okay, so when we talk about today's technology, and that's what Kohler and Misha were talking about, was they were talking about the characteristics of today's technologies make it much more difficult for teachers to integrate technology. It's very easy to know how you use a overhead projector. It might be a lot more difficult to think about how I'm going to have a student use their smartphone in the classroom because of those characteristics of it. The one primarily there being the protein aspect of the fact that there are many uses to it, and one of those is that they could text their friends or do other things that might distract them. Nonetheless, when we think about technology, okay, whether it's digital or otherwise, we want to be thinking about how we're using it. What's the purpose of our using it? So when we think about that framework, okay, when we think about the technology in that framework, we think about what do I want to teach and how do I want to teach it? We're entering into, again, thinking about what's the specific use here. And if we think about a cell phone again, and we think about we want to communicate with it, there are many different parts of that technology or many different features of that technology that we would use to communicate that have very specific functions. So if I said you need to communicate with your boss about the fact that you are not going to be in to work, okay, you would probably not well, this might not be a good example. Let me think of another one. If you're going to break up with your girlfriend, okay, if we look in the right-hand corner there, you're probably, hopefully not going to text her or him, your boyfriend. You're not going to text them that information. Or send them an email. What you would do, hopefully, is speak to them in person, but let's say that you were for some reason unable to do that. The more personal way to do that would be to call. Okay, text messaging has a purpose. Email has a purpose. Calling has a purpose. Okay, here we're starting to think about two, synchronous and asynchronous communication. So communicating in real time as opposed to communicating, in a format where that message may or may not get to them immediately. They may not get it. So again, most people, you're going to more likely get a message via a phone call or a text message before you will an email. So we want to be thinking about how we're using this technology specifically to accomplish the task that we are interested in accomplishing. Okay. So pedagogical knowledge, when we think about integrating technology, the first thing we want to think about really actually would be the content. Let's bring that on in here, would be our content knowledge. So what do we want to teach? What's the content that we want to teach? And then we're going to think about best practices. So what does best practice dictate about how we're going to teach that content? And then from there, we think about what technology is going to facilitate that process. What technology is going to help us teach, okay, what we're trying to teach. And one of the things we want to continually be thinking about is, what is the value added? There's no right way to use technology, nor does every lesson require the use of technology. We're only going to use technology when it advances our objective, and our objective is always improve student learning. Okay, so if it's not going to help us to achieve improved student learning, now sometimes that may be that it's helping us engage students, that it's helping us motivate students through a tool like, let's say, Kahoot, okay, which is a gamification of assessment that engages and motivates students because it's game-like. Okay, but if we're not getting that value added, then we don't want to use the technology. Okay. How does technology influence pedagogy? Well, let's take a look at this classroom. Okay, and this is a perfect example of some older technologies that haven't changed a whole lot. Okay, when we look at this classroom, and maybe you're thinking about, well, what are the technologies in this classroom? And those could be the books on the shelves, it could be the student's desk. Okay, but the one I'm focusing on primarily in this particular picture, and again, we look at this classroom, and with the exception of the fact that it would be updated with a whiteboard and shinier new desk, this classroom hasn't changed a lot in several hundred years. Okay, one reason it may not have changed, and we're starting to see it change now, but one reason it may not have changed is because of the primary technology in this room, and that is the chalkboard. Okay, now that is a piece of technology that was introduced, if I'm not mistaken, in the latter part of the 19th century, and it revolutionized education. Okay, what it also did was dictate our pedagogy. Okay, so look at how the desks are arranged. Okay, that chalkboard says, that technology says, the learning is at the front of the room, so we've arranged our desk, okay, in a very teacher-centered format, okay, so that everybody's looking at the chalkboard, because that technology dictates that that's where the learning's going to take place. Now, if we talk about a cell phone or Chromebook, that changes that paradigm also, right? Where now it's a much more student-centered, much more self-directed and self-regulated learning experience dictated by that technology. So that's just an example of how technology can dictate our pedagogy or influence our pedagogy. Let me give you another example of how technology can, and this is just a more recent version of that same classroom. Let me give you another example of how technology can influence our pedagogy or change our pedagogy. Okay, what we have here are Geoboards, one of them being a physical tool that you would use, those being the orange ones, and the other ones being the app, Geoboard app, that allows students to access or to work with this tool virtually. And there's a lot of benefits to that. One is the anywhere access, okay, to that. So if students have a mobile device at home, whether that's their parents' smartphone or a computer or a laptop or a tablet, they can access that manipulative, whereas they're not going to be enough of the orange ones, the real manipulative for everyone to take home. Okay, there are other benefits too also from that. One, you're not going to lose the rubber bands, and you're not going to have to replace those, or the little boards. They're easier to clean. Okay, think about during flu season trying to clean all the rubber bands or all of the little boards. Okay, whereas if you have an iPad that they're using, a tablet or a Chromebook, you just take a wet wipe, you wipe it off, and you're ready to go. What I really wanted to talk about was wikis, and need to wrap this up because this video is getting rather long. Okay, wikis are a great example of how technology supports pedagogy. And I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to go to this wiki that I have over here. This is a wiki I used to use in this class, okay? And all a wiki is, and everybody in here's used a wiki. If you've ever accessed Wikipedia, you've used a wiki. A wiki is an interactive website. So if I click on edit, snap my fingers, and the website becomes, you see me type in here, the website becomes a Word document. I can type in here, and once I hit, I'm just going to delete that. Once I hit save, snap my fingers again, and it's back to a website. Okay, so as a former English teacher, this would be a great tool for me to use as a portfolio in my classroom, a writing portfolio. Every student, okay, I can go to users here, and I can very quickly create a classroom set, so I can add users. Okay, I can put how many ones I want to have in here. Okay, I can excuse me. I can put how many users I want in here. I can every student can create their either I can create or every student can create a wiki for themselves, and that wiki can become their portfolio. Every time they write a paper, they just make a new page up here. That page becomes the document that they're writing on. So, how does this support best practices in writing? Well, first of all, we know portfolios is one aspect of best practice in writing. Probably many of you had portfolios that you started in middle school or elementary school and that followed you through middle and high school. Okay, and what the purpose of a portfolio is that you collect your writing samples, and you hopefully revisit those and see growth over time. So first of all, the wiki allows students to have a virtual portfolio, okay, that they can access from anywhere, and that's one of the big benefits of technology and accessing things online, right? Next, what research shows is that when students write online, where anyone can see it, their parents, their peers, they tend to write more and they tend to make fewer mistakes. That's another way that this supports our teaching of writing. Okay, so we have our technology, that's our T, supporting our teaching, that's our P of our content area, writing. Okay, so another way that it does that is when I hit edit. Okay, so students can come in here. If I was a student, I could come in here, and like I have with this highlighted part, so anybody I give access to can write on here. So a student could come in here and appear and peer edit and say, just put maybe in parentheses, I think you should add more detail here, right? And then just save that. They could change the color if they wanted to, so that they would know that, or the font, so that they would know that someone had made a change, right? Okay, or what they could do, and remember, peer editing is, again, best practices for teaching writing is peer editing, or what they could do is just come down here, and the student could make a comment down here in the comment section, okay, giving feedback to this student about their paper. Okay, teachers could also. Okay, you just hit add comment. You can see I've done this before, write a comment, make suggestions. Okay, and so it supports peer editing. The final part of it, which I love about wikis, is I can go to this page history. And this would assuage some of your fears, also probably that you're having about, well, what if a student came on and or someone just came on and just deleted somebody's paper? Okay, well, only the administrator, whoever controls the page, can access the page history. And when you click on that, it shows you every change that's ever been made to this document. So if someone came in and deleted it, you would be able to see who did it. Here's my name, who made that change, so you would know who the rascal was who deleted their paper or wrote something inappropriate on there. And you just hit that X right there, and it takes it away. It takes the last change away from, it deletes that last change. Or if you wanted to delete any change, you could do that. Okay, what you can also do is I can compare. So if I want to see what that paper looked like when that student first wrote it and turned it into me as the teacher, and then I made suggestions and their peers made suggestions, I just hit the last one and the first radio button and the last radio button here, and I hit compare, and it will show me all the changes. So I would see here, if I had a paper on here, all of the changes. So a great tool to support the writing, teaching of writing because of those features. And that's pretty much all I have. The last thing I want to say is just this last little bit about, and then like I say, I need to get off of here because this is getting pretty long. So when we think about using technology, we go through 3 phases. The first is awareness, and that's one of the goals of this class, is to make you aware of some new technologies. Once you're made aware of a technology like Google Documents or Padlet or Flipgrid, and maybe some of you know all of those, okay, the next thing that you want to do is learn how to use it. That's the praxis stage of it, okay, to develop your understanding of how this technology can be used. Then finally, what you want to do is you want to learn the phronesis, or enter into the phronesis stage, which is when you know you're aware of it, you know how to use it. This is to knowing when to use it. And this is why it's oftentimes hard for teachers to utilize this framework, this Tpack framework, is because you don't necessarily have a deep knowledge in the areas of your content area or your pedagogy. A lot of teachers learn their content knowledge on the job. So let's take an English teacher like I was. How many of you really can teach a lesson right now on gerunds or participles or any aspect of grammar? Okay, how long has it been since you learned those things yourselves? So a lot of that content you're going to learn on the job, that content knowledge. Also, you don't have a deep understanding of pedagogy. So, once you develop those things and you start to learn about technologies, you just, you go, when you learn a technology, you think, this would be perfect for teaching that. Okay, that's why it's difficult oftentimes to integrate Tpack into and to discuss it as it relates to your lessons, which we're going to do in this semester, because you don't have a deep understanding of the feature or the elements of Tpack. All right, I'm going to wrap that up. Okay, if you have any questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. Hope this helped.